Hey guys, MeLikeBigBoom here, bring you guys a new Unturned informational video showing you guys how you can make a map in Unturned 3.0. Now I am a little bit late on this. Unturned's been out for like almost a month now, I think, but a lot of you guys have been asking me to do a tutorial on the level editor, so I decided to sit down, learn everything about it, and now I'm going to transfer the information to you guys with this little tutorial video. So by the end of this video, hopefully if you follow my steps correctly, you will have a nice little island with a major road running through it, a town, and some items to spawn in there, and then you're going to be able to play on it in single player and mess around with it. So without further ado, let's get started. Oh wait, so apparently still some people are having issues trying to get into 3.0. If you guys are wondering how to get access to 3.0 in the first place, I will put a video on the screen right now and in the description down below, so that way you can figure out how to get access to 3.0. But now, I guess, we can get started. So in order to get access to the level editor, you have to go into the workshop in the main menu and click the editor. The upload and download buttons are not in yet, but of course, download would allow you to download community maps, and upload will allow you to upload your own maps to the community. But for now, we're just going to create a town, and as you can see, these are all my super failed towns that I've made, but now we're going to make a new one now that I know like what I'm doing. So on the left there are going to be a bunch of different buttons that you can press, so we're going to start up at the top and give our map a name. So I'm just going to name mine just MeLikeBigBoom. I don't think I've done that yet, have I? No, I haven't. Alright, so here you can click the size. It can range from 512 by 512, which is a super small map. That's probably more for like an arena kind of thing, or you can make it all the way up to 8192 by 8192, and that is massive. That is a very large map, and it will definitely require a pretty solid PC to edit on a map of that size. Now since I'm doing a tutorial with just like one town, I'm just going to keep it down to 1024 by 1024, which is like way smaller than PEI, I'm pretty sure. I think you could probably fit like the airport of PEI in a map of that size. So in order to add it, you just click the add button and it will add it to the right side. So here it is. Here's the map that we just added, MeLikeBigBoom 1024 by 1024 size, and you're gonna go ahead and click on that and it will add it to the selection up at the top. And then from here you can click that edit button and it will begin loading the level editor of the map that you selected. So now we are in a giant blank red world. So one of the first things that I like to do is to change the lighting to midday, because I don't want to edit my map when everything's red, because it's not what it's supposed to look like. So immediately you can just go into the environment tab, go into lighting, and change the time to midday. So there we go. Now everything's all blue like what it's supposed to be. Alright, so now that we have our level looking like a normal world, I'm going to show you the basic controls of how to move around in the level editor. So in order to move around, your natural instinct is just to press the WASD keys, but it doesn't do anything. You can hear me clicking them. In order to unlock the movement, you have to hold down the right mouse and it will make your mouse cursor disappear, and from here you can look around if you're holding it down, and it also unlocks the WASD keys, and that way you can move around in the world. If you'd like to get from one place to another quickly, if you hold shift, it kind of sprints, I guess. When I'm creating the terrain and making my island, I like to go very in the top right or top corner of the map, so that way I can get a nice bird's eye view of the whole world, and then I can start sculpting my island, I guess. So luckily, Nelson created all these buttons in a nice chronological order, so really if you're creating a map, you should work from left to right, and then each of these major tabs have tabs within them that also are in chronological order. So of course we're going to start with heights in the first terrain tab, and we are going to start sculpting our island. Now I think I'm going to make it like a peanut shape or something, so I'm going to increase the size of my brush. That might be a little bit too big. You could make it massive, like this big, if you just want to create it all land, but I'm just going to make it an island, so drag the size down to about that size, and the strength will change how strongly it will pull up the earth. So if you make it super low strength, it will take quite a while for the earth to break the surface of the water. So I'm still clicking down, still clicking down, still clicking down. There we go. So finally it broke the surface. So I'm going to make the strength higher, and I'm just going to make like a little island over here. This is not turning out to be a peanut shape, but whatever. We're just going to go with it. And Alright, that looks pretty islandy. Now, one thing that you're probably thinking is like, why is it black? Well, I will get into that. That's because we haven't applied some sort of material to it. So right now it's just nothing. So I'm also going to go over these different tools here. So the lower tool is obviously lower little sections. So I'm going to make it a small little brush with strong tool, and I'm going to make like a little inlet, I guess, over here. Alright, I might need to make the size a bit bigger. Right there. So now it's a little valley, I guess. So that's the lower tool. And then the smooth is to smoothen everything out. Oftentimes you'll make mistakes, so when you try and fix it with the raise and lower tool, it'll be all jagged. So if you smoothen it out, it'll work well. And then the flatten tool is extremely useful for if you're making like farmland, and if you're just constantly messing around with the raise and lower and smooth tools, it's impossible to get a perfectly flat land. So the flatten will flatten the terrain to a certain height. So now that we've gotten our island shape, I guess, moderately correct, once I apply some terrain, I might add a mountain in the middle or something, but so far I think it looks alright. So now we're going to move on to the materials tab, which is nicely placed right next to the heights tab, once again in chronological order. So I'm going to start off with some sand. I'm going to lay down sand everywhere. I will explain why in a little bit, so I'll just put the brush size really high and drag it around. So now we have sand everywhere. And so now there's sand at the bottom of the ocean, which makes sense because if you go to the bottom of the ocean, there is sand, I'm pretty sure. And then we're going to lay on some grass onto our island because that's where the grass belongs, not at the bottom of the ocean. Now, also you can choose to place grass down at the bottom of the ocean, so I'm just going to make a little one here. So like, see, there's grass down at the bottom of the ocean. Now that doesn't make any sense, so I'm going to cover that back up with sand. But, so just make sure that where you're placing your stuff, it also applies to underwater as well, so just make sure that you keep that in mind. So now I'm going to go back to grass, and I will add some grass around the edges, leaving a little bit of sand at the beaches, so in that way it's not all grass. So just go around the edges. Now it will look really ugly at first. Like you see all these pixelated edges, that's ugly. We don't want that. So let's just paint around, make some nice beaches. Alright, so now we've got some grass around the major areas of our world, and then we can add some more specific things like dirt or something. So I'm going to make this little area here the ugly beach that no one wants to go to. So now when we click bake materials, it will automatically just average everything out and make the sand next to the water super close, and make this a certain material if it's a certain steepness, and blah 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 blah. And when you click bake materials, ta-da, it fancifies everything. Like, look at that, everything's all smoothed out. The steep areas have dirt over it because grass can't grow on places that steep. The sand is really close to the edge. I think that it definitely should be closer in some areas, but that's where we go into the sand and make the steepness a bit higher. Alright, so now that we have our materials all baked and all fancy, now we can move on to the next tab, which is the details tab. Now this will begin to add all sorts of grass and flowers and rocks to our island. I prefer to actually skip these two steps until after we've created our objects, so in that way the terrain conforms to the objects and roads that we put down. Because if you were to add the grass and all that stuff, like what I'm going to do here, as you can see, I added a bunch of rocks and flowers, made it look all fancy. But when you go and place down like a house or an object or something, the grass will be growing out of the bottom. So as a result, you'll have to continually press bake materials in order for it to update that. So since I've already done it, I guess, and I can't undo it, we'll just move on. But I guess from here I can show you how to adjust the parameters to change the amount of each object. Now I'm not a big fan of having this survival game have like flowers and all that jazz and zombies. I don't think they fit very well together, like cutesy flowers and horror zombies. So I like to turn my flowers off, so flowers off. So now that we have everything on 0, now all we have is just grass and rocks. Now I think it looks kind of retarded with this many rocks around, so I will turn the density of the grass up, and turn the chance of the pebbles down, chance of the pebbles down, chance of the pebbles down. Alright, so now it's looking good. We have rocks like every once in a while, like here, and where else? Here. So as you can see, just there are rocks every once in a while, and then there's grass everywhere, so it's super nice looking. We have a nice field everywhere. That's exactly what I was hoping for, and now we can move on to the Resources tab. Now, I prefer not to do the Resources tab once again, because this one actually creates trees, so it makes it like harder to put down objects without like trees getting in the way. So we will do that last. So from here we're going to skip on to the next major tab, which is the Environment tab. So from here you can adjust the lighting, add roads, navigation, which isn't in yet, but it's like pathfinding stuff, and nodes, which also isn't in yet, but that would be like to play an ocean sound when you're next to the beach, or like windy sounds when you're next to a cliff and stuff like that. So those two aren't in yet, but from here we're going to move on to lighting, which you can spend hours on. Trust me, I've spent way too much time in the lighting tab, but for this instance I'm just going to spend a little bit less time on here. But basically you can change the color of the sky and the fog and the sun and all that jazz at certain times of the day. So during midday, which is what we're in right now, I'm going to turn the clouds down. That's one thing that I really like to turn down, because right now there's just so many clouds. So as a result, I'm going to turn the clouds all the way down on dawn and midday. So just turn them down like that, way down. And now we have clouds like every once in a while, so that's pretty nice, and we can see the beautiful sun. So then we're going to change the time to midnight, so like this. And then we can change what our world will look like at midnight. So I like to turn the fog at midnight up, so it makes it look more scary and eerie at nighttime. And turn the shadows way up. And I mean, like, I can adjust it to where like sundown isn't so red and stuff like that, or pink. Like this is like pink. I don't want that. So turn the sea at dawn to make it look more, or I guess this is dusk that we're in. Make it more blue like that. That's kind of nice. Then the sun, let's see, the sky. Make it more blue. More red a little bit. Alright, so now that I've adjusted the colors, now when it is dawn, it will look like this, a nice yellow. And then as it moves to daytime, we get this nice bright color. And then it moves on to dusk over here. And then it becomes nighttime with all the stars, and then it comes back to dawn of the next day. So I'm going to turn it back to daytime, so that way we can continue our editing. And so that's the basic of the lighting tab. Also there's azimuth, which changes the position of the sun. So like here, I'll make it lower to the horizon. So azimuth changes its position. Anyway, so that's like the basics of the lighting tab. So from here I think we can move on to something else. So we'll move on to the roads. Now before I start creating a road, I'm going to move back to the terrain tab and create some sort of flat area where we're going to create our town. So this little peninsula thing that we have going on here, I think that's a good spot to make a town. But as you can see, it's kind of all weirdly shaped. It's got some weird ripples and stuff going on. So I'm going to go into the terrain tab. And normally you would go and be like, well, maybe I could smooth it out or something, so I'll reduce the size, smooth it out, and it does kind of help a little bit. But in order to create it like perfectly flat, I'd recommend using the flatten tool. So immediately you're like, oh yeah, use the flatten tool, click, and everything is going well. But sometimes what it can do is it will like immediately flatten it down to sea level. So like it'll make a huge gaping hole. So if you're wondering how you can change that, if you press E, it will sample the flatten tool to that certain height. So if I wanted to flatten everything to the height of the top of this mountain, I press E and it will adjust the flatten tool to that height. So if I were to click right here, it would do that, and we don't want that. So I'm going to sample the flatten tool to down here and flatten it out like that. And as you can see, it's messing it up there, so we just go into smoothing it out. And I think that's good. Now we smoothing it out over here. Smoothing it out over here. And then as a result, we have to go to bake materials and bake all of our materials again. And bake our details again as well. And now everything is pretty much fixed. So now, our terrain, we have a nice little flat area right here where we can build our town. Look at that, perfectly flat. So from here, I think I'm just going to make a major road running through here. So we're going to go into road and make a highway. So click on highway and it says that your selection is highway. And we'll just create like a slightly curved parentheses or something. So if you just click a bunch of times, it will just connect all the dots for you, and that'll be the path of the highway. And you're probably like, well, where the heck is my freaking highway? Well, you have to press bake roads, and it will automatically, magically put the road where you wanted it to. Now, if you were to create some roads over here where the terrain isn't flat, it will start clipping into the ground and making it look all ugly. So like right there, as you can see, the ground is like sticking out and stuff like that. One thing that you can do to fix that is super closely put the nodes together, so that way the road is consistently following the terrain of the path. But if you like skip a big jump, it will literally connect the two roads together, and it will like go through the ground. So as you can see, it's connecting these two together, but the ground is like a hump right here, so the road is like under the world, as you can see. So if you want to delete a world delete a road because it's all ugly, you just click on each individual node, which will take a super long time, and you have to press the delete key. So we're just going to delete all of these. Alright, so now that they've all been deleted, we click bake roads, and they all disappear. So now we're going to move back to our actual road that is pretty, and you'll notice that all the grass is growing through it, and that's what I had discussed earlier. Go back into the materials and rebake the materials, and it will add dirt around the edges, and as a result, when you click bake details, it will make the grass no longer grow on the dirt. So that's why I said it's best to make the materials and details that's why I said it's probably best to bake the materials and details last, so that way you aren't having to consistently go back and bake the materials every time you put down something new. So we're going to go back into our roads tab, and we're going to create like a regular road branching off of this one. So we'll just put it right here, and it will go down to the dock over here, and we'll bake roads, and it made a nice little path. Now, as you can see, it's clipping through right here because you kind of space these two nodes apart. For simple things like that, you can just go into back into the terrain and make it back smaller, put it on the lower tool, make the strength a lot less, and just like click on it once and it should fix it. Alright, so now that we have our basic roads down, we can move on to the next button on the I guess buttons up here. Now since the navigation and nodes are gone, we can move on to the spawns. Now I think Nelson should have flip-flopped the spawns and objects with each other, because I think you should put down the objects first and then create the player spawns and item spawns and stuff like that. So we're going to move on over to the objects first, and we're going to start placing down some major objects like buildings and little things like intersections and stuff like that. So I guess the first thing that we should probably create is a stop sign right here, so that way the people driving up here have to stop from the cross traffic here. I know it's an apocalypse, but hey, it used to be a real civilization. So we're going to go back into objects. Now I think a stop sign is a relatively small object, so we'll look in here and look for a stop sign, and it looks like we don't have one, so we'll move into the medium tab, look for a stop sign, into the S's. Oh, look at that stop sign. Alright, so now that you have it selected, you're probably like, click, click, where is my stop sign? In order to place down an object, you have to put the cursor where you want to place it and click E, and it will place down our stop sign. So down here we have transform and rotation. So transform will allow you to change its location from within the world, just in case you placed it down in an area that you didn't want it to, and rotation will obviously allow you to rotate it around three-dimensionally as well. So we can make our stop sign like crooked or something, so that, because you know it's an apocalypse, so we just make it like that. And now that we have our crooked stop sign, we can select elsewhere, and our stop sign is right there. So look at that, very nice. Alright, so I'm going to place down some more things. So I think it's best to move from large down to small, so that way we place down the big objects like houses and stuff like that, and then we can move on to the more detailed stuff like garbage bags and little manhole covers and stuff like that. So we'll start with large, and we'll create a house. So let's just do house number 10. Sure, that looks alright. Since I placed it here, I think it might have been a little bit better to place it over here. So I'll just click it there. We'll drag it down, go into rotation, we'll just do that. How about that? Now in order to make sure that it's the perfect height, I'm going to go inside the house and make sure that it's not like clipping into the ground like this, to where like the ground is inside the world or something like that, or inside the house. So just make it to where its highest point isn't cutting into the ground, so we'll just check everything. Everything seems to be all good. Now I realize that the doorway is right there, so I might want to rotate it to where the doorway is at the highest point of the ground. So like that. We'll go into the transform, move it to where it's flush with the ground. There we go. And now we can click elsewhere, and now our world is, or our little house is made. And so the back end looks like that. Luckily, Nelson made the models to where they're like super long, so that way you can do things like this where you can have a house on the edge without it having like a box, or like the bottom like that. Alright, so now our house is placed down. So now I'm going to go a little bit more in detail from stuff within the house. So in medium, I will add, let's say, a mailbox. So we'll put a little mailbox up front. Go into rotation, make it to where it's facing forward. Alright, so that's nice. We can have an oven, so we'll make like a little kitchen over here. Alright, so you can get super detailed with your stuff. I'm not really going to do that right now because it's just a tutorial video, but you get the basic functions of how to place down stuff. And so yeah, they have all these different options, and then in the small, there are vines, which I think you can go crazy with and make stuff look cool. So like this back end looks really boring, so if we just add some vines to it, and so, I mean, it looks kind of retarded when we just have a square vine there, but whatever, you know, it'll work, okay? I mean, if you go crazy with it, you can definitely make a lot of cool things with the objects that you can put down. So now that we've gotten the objects all placed down like we want them to, we can go move on to the spawns and create a player spawn. So in order, if you want to play this in single player, you're obviously going to need somewhere to spawn. So I'm just going to make my character spawn right here. You can adjust the angle like this. So I'm going to create a few, so that way you can spawn randomly in different locations. Now if you have a massive map, then you'd obviously want to spread these about. So there we go. Now we've got some player spawns down. We can move on to the item spawn, so now we can place down some items. So the first thing that you should do when you go into the item spawn is create a table over to the right. So a table will basically make a certain area or a selection of spawns. So like for this, we're going to call it house and press add. And now when you click on this, when you select it and you add different tiers and objects to spawn, it will apply to all the different nodes from within the house. So we're going to create a tier and call it rare. I mean, it'll make sense when you do it. So we'll just create a rare tier and an uncommon tier and a common tier. So now we've got these different tiers. We can adjust the ratio of how we want these items to spawn from within these tiers. So rare is obviously going to be a lower chance, so we'll make it 5%, and we'll just adjust these ratios how we want them. So now we have our common is 70% chance of spawning, uncommon is 26%, and rare is 4%. So now we're going to click on rare, for example, and add an ID to that spawn. So before we do that, we're going to need some areas where the items can spawn. So we're going to click our house tier, and we're going to begin placing items in our house. So we'll put like 1 or 2 on top of the house, 1 on top of the stove, 1 in the corner, let's say 1 by the mailbox, 1 by the stop sign, 1 or 2 by there, 1 in there, 1 in there. Alright, so now we've got some objects down. You could get a bit more detailed if you'd like. And now we can color code all these nodes that we placed down if we want to get more detailed with it. So as you can see, it's changing them to pink. So now that can be kind of useful if you were making like a massive world. And if all the nodes were white, it would be kind of difficult to figure out what tier each node is in. So I'm going to make these just red or something. And so now we can begin editing what can be spawned in those locations. So all these different tiers that we've made before, we can click on that and begin adding IDs to these spawn points. So for rare, I think we can do an AR32, which I think has an ID of 4. Yep, so AR32 has a 4% chance of spawning in one of these little spawn points, and then at I think 6 is a magazine, so that is also a super rare drop. In uncommon, we can have like the shades and maybe the jeans, and then in common we can have a chance of spawning an orange hoodie, and no, we don't want AO32, so delete that. And maybe Oh no, not a silencer. I don't know all the ID values of all these, but you can just start pressing numbers from 1 to 100 and see what pops up. So like 75. I don't even think that's yeah. It will automatically preset to 0 if it doesn't exist. But now we've got the basic functions of item spawning in. So if you wanted to add an extra tier and call it the beach and add and click on it, it will have its own new set of stuff. So we're going to have to add some new values and put some spawns along the beach. There we go, looking nice. And color code it a different color like purple. Add some tiers like common and uncommon. There we go. So now we've got some spawns in it. You can definitely get a lot more detailed with it, especially when Nelson begins adding a whole ton of objects. And now that we've gotten those down, that really is everything available so far in the Unturned level editor. Nelson hasn't added animals or vehicles in yet. Zombies are, or at least going to be, in the animals category. But once those are added, I might add an updated tutorial video on the basics of the level editor. But now we're going to rebake the materials and add the resources just to finish our world off. So if we click bake materials, it will make dirt around our house and all that, so it looks pretty nice. And then we bake details, it will make the grass correspond to that as well. And then we can go into resources. Now you can choose to edit the values of these as well. So let's say you don't want like the second model of the maple tree, you can just turn those values down. And when you click bake resources, it will add them to your world. And I mean, usually it does a pretty good job of it. If you really don't like how it spawns, see, like I don't like how there's only 2 trees next to our house, you can just click bake resources until you get it how you'd like. So I guess that's better. Anyway, so that is, I guess, the basic features. So to finish it off, I'm going to go and save our world. So click save. Make sure that you save it, because if you press exit, it will have like no warning. If you just press exit, it'll instantly go out of your world. So luckily I pressed save. And so now if you'd like to play on our world, you click single player and select the world that we made. So MeLikeBigBoom, and we'll click play. And would you look at that, we have our world here. So we have our little house that we made in here, and as you can see, some items spawn. So we had a common thing here, and we're able to pick up our orange hoodie, and we have an orange hoodie in here. Nothing spawned in here, so also there is a chance that nothing will spawn in the nodes that we place down. And we can go down to our beach down here, and there are nice trees around. I mean, unfortunately it is sunset right now. Or is it sunrise? Yeah, it's sunrise, but still, I mean, we have some stuff. And also in the new update, Nelson added some new sounds. As you can see, or I guess here, there's now ocean sounds when you're next to the ocean. So I think that's pretty cool, but those are the basic features of the level editor. Have fun making some crazy worlds. Eventually I plan on doing a map showcase every week or so, but once the community begins making some massive maps, then I can begin that series. But now that you know the basic features, hopefully you guys can make something awesome. If you'd like to submit some of your worlds, just comment them down below if you got something cool, or like put a link to a cool picture that you made. I'll make sure to check it out. But that is all I have for now. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to rate, comment, subscribe, and do all that gibberish, because we like Big Boom. He's out.